All right, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This meeting of the Barnstable Infrastructure and Energy Committee is being recorded and will be posted for future viewing on the Town of Barnstable website. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, anyone else desiring to make such recording or transmission must notify the chair. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Barry.
Okay, great. Well, okay, we're starting the meeting, and first let's go over the minutes of the last meeting. I looked at them. I don't really have any suggested changes. Look good to me.
Well, I move that I move to approve the minutes.
Okay. A second. I'll second it then. All in favor of adopting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're unanimous. The minutes are adopted. So for old business, first on the agenda, we have green communities. And we met, so John and Jane and I met with Brian Florence, who's head of the inspectional services, is basically the building inspector. And I passed around the agenda that we gave to him prior to the meeting, so you have that. And with these meetings, I get tired of listening to myself talk. So let me ask Jane or John if you'd like to start off summarizing the meeting, then the rest of us can chip in with our thoughts.
Well, I think it was a very good meeting where our purpose, Rob, was basically to introduce ourselves and to try to be listeners. Brian has had a history of not being a big fan of the stretch code, and he introduced himself to us as a fellow who's been doing hands-on construction himself since he was a young boy, working with his dad or his uncle, I forget. And he has expressed his opinion, I think, in various venues, that he doesn't think the stretch code is a good idea, that it's going to put more burden on the builders and the building owners, and that he thinks that some aspects of the green communities we've done already as a town. But we tried to be good listeners and to ask for his input. And I felt like we ended up the meeting with him telling us that this was the best meeting of 3 that he's had with similar groups, either our predecessors from this committee or others who've been big fans of the green communities and have come in, he felt, with their minds made up and not wanting to hear his side of things. So we asked him if we were to hold a workshop for the town council, if they did want to take this up in the fall, who else would he recommend that we talk to who should present different perspectives? So he's going to get us some folks, I think, from the actual home builders community or one of their organizations. And I felt like we accomplished the goal of, reaching out, being good listeners, asking, what could we do from his perspective to help bring more perspectives and information to the conversation. That was my takeaway.
Yeah, I think that's a good summary, Jane. And I guess the other takeaway that I had was that if we want to present this and hope that the town council adopts it, I think our challenge is to really do a careful job of articulating exactly what the benefits of doing this would be, and really showing that those benefits are greater than the costs. Because, as Brian pointed out, there are costs associated with it, and I think we've got to really try to be quantitative and show that the benefits are worth it. And I think, actually, Barry, you've found something very helpful. That's a very good start on that. Because I think the first challenge is to really quantify the savings of building a house that meets the stretch code instead of just the current code.
Yeah, and I think well, yeah. So I sort of my takeaway from the meeting is that his strong perception was that there are substantial additional costs imposed by the stretch code, and the benefits, whatever they are, don't justify the cost. And we asked him if he's seen some specific studies. He had not. And but so one of the things that he had said, that the average homeowner sells their home in 7 years, and that suggesting that that's, if you consider benefits from energy savings, that you should consider just 7 years. I said I don't think that that's the proper way to evaluate it if the benefits are over a longer period. And even if people did sell their houses, you would think that the reduced operating costs would be reflected in the sales price. But the for which there is evidence for solar PV anyway. But so my takeaway that if we were going to advance this, we really need to look carefully at the costs and benefits. I did reach out to Lisa Sullivan, who's our regional representative for DOER, and she gave me a summary of the economic analysis that was done by a consultant for DOER when they adopted the stretch code. And I think, and also based on my having a brief conversation with her, it probably is easier to evaluate for new houses than it is for remodels because of the great variety. And even both Brian and had remodeled our houses, and our experience was quite different in terms of the he lives in a town that had the stretch code in terms of the additional cost of insulation to meet the stretch code. And while I did not, I did go to a HERS rater and got the input for the measures that he would suggest, and found that it was a couple of $1,000s of really a very pretty large project. But
well, Barry, the other thing about that is Allison, who talked to us a month ago, I guess now, said on at least 60 projects in which she and the homeowners or building owners have worked with a HERS rater, she felt that the HERS raters had given them suggestions, and I don't think there were requirements. Maybe they were trying to meet certain green building, certification codes, but that on 60 projects, she felt like the HERS raters had saved them money overall, either on the design or on the operating costs. That's kind of the data I hear from the reading I do from the green communities. I haven't put my hands on particular studies yet, but it's a totally different perspective. And I think, as we've mentioned, Rob Brennan, who's been not only a leader in the home builders community on the Cape, but nationally on some of their committees, he's a huge fan. I mean, he's a big promoter right now of the Climate Change Collaborative has basically co-founded the Massachusetts, I think it's called the Home and Climate Change Innovation Center. They're hosting 8 college students on the Cape right now who are farmed out to different agencies or towns or whatever to work on helping to brainstorm even more innovative, affordable housing that also helps to mitigate climate change. And apparently, Rob Brennan is now much more in favor of, tighter standards. I don't know exactly because I haven't talked to him, but whether he's in favor of the stretch code or moving more in that direction. But I think we've heard, anecdotally, without having the studies in our hands, that
my sense is these are kind of what I'm drawing from this. I think we need to at least understand information that isn't just anecdotal.
Yes, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
And,
agree.
and my very quick reading of the DOER study, I just focus on the residential part, is that if you're using heat pumps, it is clearly a benefit going to the level required by the stretch code. At least it was proposed when they did this, and their own data suggests if you're using gas heating, it's a mixed bag. So, but I think that's where they're going anyway, and that's, some of us have already done that. We've converted to heat pumps, and so I think if we go, we need to do some more work. But if we go to a workshop, I'd like to, as a part of it, maybe Chris present about climate change, because that's kind of a driver here. Like many other things under the Green Communities Act. Secondly, that we really present regarding the economics of it and go beyond, just anecdotal stuff. And thirdly, I would like to go into that with a reasonable sense that we would have enough votes to prevail at the town council meeting. Because I've talked to a number of people. I mean, this has failed 3 times. So, I think that can be done, and perhaps talking to some of the town council members that didn't vote for it last time and see if they might have a different perspective now. But that's my sense of it. I have a follow-up call with Lisa Sullivan on Thursday. I do have a call into Habitat for Humanity to get the right person to talk to. I have talked to Rob Brennan, but haven't been able to get a follow-up meeting with him, which he said he would do. So, so my kind of conclusion on this is to sort of keep going on it and pursue it. But I think my sense is important to, before we really bring this up to town council, to have a reasonable sense that the vote would be positive.
Well, and I think wasn't it Lisa or not Lisa, Kristen, who brought it up recently at the town council that
Yeah, I
needed to
mean,
consider it again.
yes,
I
they
think
said
there's
they
a fair
would
number of counselors that are very, very interested in this. I can think of at least 4.
Yeah, there were 3 votes last time. So of the town council members who are still here, there were 3 for and 3 against. And just a lot of the members in the town council are either in the construction or real estate industry. So I think part of this is the basic merits of it, and maybe part of it is, understandably, if you're in the construction business, this is really another hoop to go through.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, when I negotiated my contract to have, a FERS rater be part of the process, and at that time, I believe I could have qualified for the Mass Save program for, major remodelings. He was fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to get, a little bit more information, a little bit more outreach. And I would like to see whether anybody else would want to help in terms of doing the research or reaching out over the next month or so before our next meeting.
Yeah, I'd be happy to work on this and work on that part of trying to quantify the benefits.
Yeah, I could spend a little bit on it. I certainly can't take the lead, but I can do bits and pieces. And I have I have information filed away, some of which I could probably find the current version of because I was getting regular updates from the U.S. Green Building Council and
Right.
pretty
And,
impressive studies that come out of not promoted by them or run by them, but presented at their meetings and so
Right.
forth. So
and it's just not a question of quantifying the benefits, but also the cost.
right.
And so, the analysis. So when DOR did their analysis 2 years ago, what I draw from it is that in the state, the eastern part of the state, Boston and North Shore, South Shore, Cape Cod, probably is a higher cost area. The western part of the state is a lower cost area, and central Massachusetts is somewhere in between. And so they did their analysis based on information they obtained about construction costs in Worcester. And, which is a reasonable, I think, a reasonable thing to do, given differences in costs across the Commonwealth. But so I think we need to deal with two things. One is the question about what the facts are, and two, deal with what is probably given the fact it's failed in the past and the fact that some of the people making the decision, their background is in the construction or real estate industry. I think we need to deal with that and maybe overcome a somewhat negative attitude, right? Just to be practical about it. So and I'm willing to do that extra work to get there. But I think that's what I see we have in front of us to move this forward.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep, that makes sense.
And I think we need to, as I think Brian said he wanted to be sure we found unbiased data. So I think it's important to look at organizations that appear to be not as, not as interested in one perspective as the other, or some data from each community. I think, real estate is they want to sell and move the property or make sure the leased property gets rented. And so I think, real estate has less, the realtors, I think, have less skin in the game unless they're trying to sell a big project.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that they have an economic interest necessarily in this one way or the other, or that even if they did, that would affect their vote. But I'm just, there's an attitude that one needs to be honest about and one needs to deal with. That's kind of my feeling.
Yeah. Well, I remember a study that had to have been 10 years ago with some of the low income housing being renovated in the South Boston area to meet green building standards, pretty high green building standards along the LEED certification. And, it's usually full anyway, based on the cost of being low income, but the health of the community went up, a lot of intangible things that you didn't necessarily expect better housing to impacted. They got better job, less unemployment, more involvement in voting. It was all sorts of things that improved for this particular community. And, it was partly government funded housing, but there were huge benefits. So and that's low income housing. So I really think the habitat story can be a very important part of our presentation.
Okay, I have a call into them and we'll see if we can get someone to talk to there. But and if you have anyone has any ideas about people that would be good to talk to, if builders, That would be good. I do, now I think about this, I have a friend who is head of a home remodeling company, although he's been retired enough years that his knowledge may not be up to date. But okay. Anyone else have any other thoughts on this? Rob, I'm just curious whether you have any thoughts on this or. Nope. Okay.
Not this time.
Okay. All right. So let's, with regard to move on to food waste, and we did have a couple of items in our agenda for our meeting with Brian Florence, and he referred them to Tom Keene, who I believe is the head of the Board of Health, or maybe the Health Department, and said that he would be in touch with us. We haven't heard back yet. And the questions basically had to do with enforcement or encouraging people to comply with the Commonwealth's ban on, or actually requirement that food waste be diverted from the regular waste stream and be composted or otherwise properly cared for. So we haven't heard anything on that, and also with regard to the regulatory authority over the private waste haulers, what, if anything, are they doing to promote composting of food waste in that area? So those are the questions that we had.
Right. And the other interesting development on food waste, if we're ready to kind of move to that area, is
Sure.
the information, I think it was Kristen circulated last week, that the Cape Cod Commission or Barnstable County has gotten funding for a study to look into the feasibility of setting up a composting facility at the Joint Base. And I think that could really be a game changer as far as promoting local efforts to collect food waste, because it hopefully would bring the cost down quite a bit. So I think our next step would be to reach out to the two folks involved. It seems like it's Carrie Parcell and Mary Ryther are the lead contacts there. And it would be great to see what the timing and capacity and expense involved, what they're projecting, because that could really help us in making it making it a lot easier to persuade people to divert their food waste if there's a good place for it to go.
Yeah, John, I agree with your suggestions. Could you go ahead and do that? Reach out.
Yeah, I will.
Okay, great.
Jane, did you reach out to Mary Ryther in another context recently?
I don't believe so. If I did, I've forgotten about it. Is she on the Cape or is she on the
She's
Vineyard?
in Falmouth. And remember, there was some very interesting stuff going on in Falmouth.
Well, it may be that, she may be the one that the student mentioned to us.
Yeah.
He was the one that we interviewed, or that came and talked to our meeting after I met him at the Big Blue conference. And he said it was all up to her and that it had gone so well. And I continue to think that by starting in schools, that's a hugely brilliant approach, because then you get the kids excited about it. They can have competitions between grades or between classrooms. They use some of it in their garden. I mean, they do some of the composting on site and use it in their gardens. So that was I've forgotten that was her name, but I'm pretty sure that's who mentioned it.
Yeah, John, I think I saw something that the school department, and I think the elementary school in is it in Marston's Mills, or I forget which village, but they actually had a state grant. And let me see if I can find that, and I'll forward that to you. And maybe if you could follow up, see what you could find out. But I think there is something already going on with the school department in the area of food waste.
Yeah, good.
All right. Okay, anything else in food waste?
I can, if we want to, share sort of the preliminary communications items that we've been discussing internally at DPW.
That would be great.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Sure. Let me pull that up and share my screen.
I think it's important to hear if things are already happening, we don't need to duplicate them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what can you see? Do you see the document?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
see a communication plan. It's a little hard to read. The print, the type's a little small. Oh yeah,
That's
there you
better.
go. That's great. Yeah,
Okay, great.
yeah.
All right, so this is, like I said, I mean, this is an internal document that we're working on right
Yep.
now, sort of Tracy Regazio from the transfer station, and then also with my director, Dan Santos,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously leadership here within the department. So essentially just kind of lays out next steps for us and helps us to prioritize, especially as I'll be eventually heading out on maternity leave in the next probably 2 months. So a lot of it is really just sort of refreshing content that we have and then creating some new content. So we kind of identify who we want to target here. In terms of the local community, obviously targeting our annual permit holders, but there's also been a lot of talk about the per visit users as well. And we've been having this conversation specifically with Councillor Turkelson, because she's been very interested in how we're performing outreach to these per visit users, and do people understand that you can use the transfer station on a per visit basis as opposed to having an annual permit. So that is it kind of plays into this larger focus that we have with increasing communications about the per visit usage, because you can take advantage of food composting if you're a per visit user as well. And then just general outreach to the town of Barnstable residents as we do, and you'll see as I break that out with all of our communications tools and tactics. And then in terms of just other folks and advocacy, obviously Barnstable County is heavily involved. We all just talked about the article that Councillor Turkelson sent around and sort of what's being done with the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension, Mass DEP. Not that we're necessarily going to be performing any outreach to them, but keeping them sort of top of mind as resources as we're communicating and we're creating content. We don't have to go through this in too much detail, but essentially, what's the purpose here? We started food composting services in 2017, and I know Barry, you and John were in the meeting with Director Santos and Supervisor Regazio, where Tracy Regazio did say that there has been a steady uptick in folks taking advantage of the food composting services. And while that's great, obviously more can be done. So that's really the basis behind why we're looking to sort of refresh the communications. Areas of what I call concern, or what we're trying to really focus on here, are: do transfer stations know that there is a food waste and composting program? That's sort of step one. We know the folks who are using it know that, but do broader permit holders and also our per visit users understand that there is this program, and ways we can tackle that? And I go into more detail later on in the document, but reviewing signage opportunities, obviously reviewing and updating the food waste content on the Town of Barnstable website, and we'll take a look at that in a moment. Also, do residents of Barnstable understand what food composting is and how it benefits the environment? This is sort of what we talked about before, where we can bring in some third-party experts who can help us communicate the importance of food composting and food waste in general. And then we can also tie that into how easy it is to actually do through the transfer station. And then lastly, that sort of third piece that we've talked about, what I see as kind of the third theme here, is: do residents understand they can also make a huge impact at home? So this kind of piggybacks off the conversation we had with Director Santos and Tracy Regazio about the fact that there is obviously cost implications to us increasing our food waste services. So what do we want to do here? We obviously want people to utilize the services at the transfer station, but at the same time, people can make a huge impact at home. So giving them the option of do you want to do this at home? Do you want to use the transfer station? Do you want to kind of marry both and have both options at your disposal? Let's also educate them not just about the services available through the transfer station, but how they can also make an impact in their very own home if they choose to do so. And that's really where a lot of the new content creation would come from moving forward.
Yeah, Kelly, let me make a suggestion
Sure.
in this area. So, and I've been composting for, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 years at this point. So the way I was taught, and I assume this is still good information, but you want to compost in your backyard like vegetable scraps and food scraps and plant waste, but you don't want to compost animal waste because that'll attract vermin, other unwanted beings, and so I've always just put that in the trash. Now, what the town is doing allows for taking that kind of waste. So, and I think this is a point that the discussion we have with Dan Santos. So, if you compost at home with your vegetable and fruit scraps and then other things like I wouldn't put bread in my compost at home, but that the town will take it. So you are reducing the town's cost. You've got the environmental benefit of basically composting pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And that to me seems to me the optimal thing to do if people can do it and are willing to do it. And John, you may know more about this than I do, but I just want to get your take on that.
I agree that it's the that is the optimal way to do it. It does. I think some people may have one challenge for some people might be that then kind of have to have two bins in your kitchen instead of just one. And right. Also, I think for some people, where if you live in an apartment, composting would be more difficult, or if you have just a very small yard. So I think that is the best approach, what you're describing. But for some people, I think either for ease or because of their particular situation, they might still want to bring it all to the transfer station.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Just if we're trying to communicate to people different things that they can do and what the impacts are, then let's do it.
Yeah, but you're the more you do at home, the better. You're really saving the town some money, and you're cutting down on the transportation and the environmental impact of having to truck this stuff away.
Right.
And of course, also as the individual, you get the benefit of you get the compost.
Right, they're using your garden
as product.
Right, it's reducing your cost of buying stuff like that.
So I think that's an important part of the message that we're trying to communicate, is that we really want to encourage people to do that to the extent that they can.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I think the real thing that we're trying to do here is to ultimately just get people to take some sort of action, whether that's, doing it at home, doing a combination, just using the transfer station. I think starting with reinforcing the fact that we have this at the transfer station is probably the easiest thing to do. And then having, like you said, sort of this additional messaging point here. Like the way I see it is like it's layers, it's a very much a layered cake. There's not every message is going to apply to every person, but we'll still layer all of them there anyway. And ultimately hope that someone takes some sort of action here. So I took some notes and just sort of what you talked about, because this is an internal document, like I'll just add things as we're discussing. And we can kind of flesh that out as we move forward on some of the materials. But I think that's all great feedback.
I'd like to add to that too, because I think Rob and I each have at home a heating, drying composter that we can use indoors, that you might be able to put some things in, eggs or bread if you wanted to, or meat scraps that would dehydrate and basically bake your waste down to about 1/10 of its starting size, and then you can add that. What I like to do with things that are able to be composted at home but might still attract animals, like for example you mentioned bread, is put that in a compost tumbler, so it's a container that until it's composted, it's kept away from rats and things. But I think the biggest issue that seems to be missing to me is what percentage of people are we targeting with each of these? And I agree, Kelly, that we need a variety of approaches, and just to get people to be aware is a good first step, and to get people to do something, whether they compost at home and they're gardeners. I suspect, even though I'm an enthusiastic member of that group, that we are a tiny percentage of the population, because even in my neighborhood, among people who also take care of their own yard or enjoy gardening, I only know of one other neighbor in a neighborhood of, I don't know, 15 or 20 homes who actually composts at home. So yeah. I think that it's good to make it easy for the people who are willing to do some of that work and enjoy it, but I think they're a very small sector. I continue to think that the biggest bang for the buck is to go after the big producers and figure out how to give them an outlet for their 1,000 pounds a week, or this, and I love going through the schools, because I think once the students get fired up, they bring home the information to their parents. And again, it won't be all of them, but it'll be some of them. And a lot of times parents learn better from their own kids than they do from, town voices. But I think that, this is exciting that we're on this trajectory. And I have to tell you that 2 of my neighbors very recently have gotten the home composting bins, the countertop bins, John, that you worked so hard to get promoted. And they're thrilled. They've just gotten them in the last month or so, and they're all excited about it. So that was kind of neat to see that impact. But I think we want to have everybody do whatever bit they can, but we also want to make sure we're spending our biggest return on investment for our time and energy should be the bigger producers, and trying to make it easy for them.
Right. So we have reached out to the guy, the Board of Health, who's, I guess, responsible for the town. So hopefully he'll get back to us and maybe we can engage him. But maybe that would be a good start.
Yeah, I mean, to echo what you're saying, Jane, too, I mean, that was definitely a key theme we talked about in the meeting with Director Santos and with Tracy Regazio as well, is that, and I can get some of it, because I know Tracy's has no problem sharing it with the committee. I mean, there's probably no issue sharing it publicly too, but he did provide some stats, and you're right. I mean, it is small numbers, even though we're seeing an increase of adoption at the transfer station. I think they all agreed from the notes I took from that meeting that going after those commercial entities probably does make the most sense. But still, I mean, we'll do whatever we can to support it, from sort of the DPW level in terms of communications too.
Kelly, I'm sorry to interrupt, but but one thing, just to give you my experience. So I basically had been going to the transfer station for 2 years before I joined this committee. And maybe just accepting food waste was done maybe months before that, not 2 years. But I never noticed that there was a place that accepted food waste. And it was only when it was pointed out to me, because I was on this committee, that I was aware of that. So, I mean, it would be good if there was a sign out there, but it's really, unless you're really looking very closely, which I assume a lot of people are like me when they go to the transfer station, they're not looking that closely. They wouldn't see it.
Yep, you're in, you're out. Yeah, and that really goes back to the similar conversation we've been having with Councilor Turkelson about just transfer station communications in general. That kind of was spurred from the idea of, do people know that there's a per visit fee that you can pay as opposed to the annual permit fee, so that we are looking at areas where we can increase and improve signage around the transfer station. So I thought it would be an easy way, and I can kind of even just jump down to the tactics because we've really discussed a lot of the sort of the messaging themes here already. Obviously just kind of going, and I'll share this document with you all so you can review it too, but really taking a look at signage and where we can improve signage at the transfer station. Looking at how we can improve the town website as well. Right now on the transfer station page, food waste just has a PDF document under news and updates.
Yeah.
My suggestion would to have its own sort of like project landing spot with a drop down where we can increase communications. Whether it's an updated brochure, it's the videos that we've talked about, I've proposed creating potentially even information for commercial entities too, as we sort of build that out. Rather than just having sort of these one-off documents that live there, having a specific section for food composting and food waste. We talked about obviously the multimedia content, pursuing a couple of different educational videos. One, I think just a general overview of the transfer station that includes composting, maybe takes a look at where it's located on the site, what you can't compost, and then also that sort of additional standalone of a third-party expert who talks about the benefits of composting, how to compost at home, maybe that sort of hybrid approach of composting at home and also using the transfer station. And we can even build that out when we're ready to create a video that talks about commercial food waste as well, when we're ready to sort of tackle that. And then there's just a couple of other tactics that probably just haven't been utilized in the last 2 years. I mean, I've been here for just over almost about a year and a half now, and I know I haven't personally done anything with food waste yet. So just leveraging the Barnstable weekly newsletter. Barnstable Government Access has opportunities for us to run ads. They're basically slides that run in between videos, almost like commercials, and in between streaming meetings. And then obviously all of our social media, just really making sure that we make food waste and composting more regular content that's featured on all of those outlets. And then when we are ready to, I do have the suggestions in here to kind of focus on some media alerts and local radio where we can kind of pitch the storytelling aspect behind food waste and composting and how we're doing it here in Barnstable, what we're pursuing, and sort of just kind of keep that top of mind for our local media as well. So definitely a work in progress, but wanted to get things on paper because there's a lot of this I can take care of between now and being out in September, like the website updates, putting together some social media content, getting some of those videos, put together. And then we can continue to expand as we kind of look towards the role of commercial entities as well.
Very good.
Great.
That's very helpful. We really appreciate that.
Yeah. So I will clean this up, and Anna is out this week on vacation. But I'm sure I'm able to share it as a draft. I can ask Rob as well, our assistant director, and that way you all can kind of take a look, give some feedback. And we'll just continue to add to it, and I can start sort of checking off some of the easier things that are that we can take care of now.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you, Kelly. It looks terrific.
Thank you.
Excellent. So let's move on to the next thing, which is climate change and climate science. Chris isn't here. I think I was going to look towards him for that, but wonder whether anyone has any updates in this area.
Well, I look to Chris's input too. I think it'd be fascinating, and his position is really communicating climate risk. That's kind of what his job title almost at Woods Hole Group. I think he's at the Woods Hole Group. So I think just hearing from him, kind of more about his goals at his work and how might that apply to our role in the town as an advisory group. I mean, to me, a lot of stuff, if you keep the agreement or the declaration of the town a couple years ago that yes, there is a climate emergency. I mean, the word emergency to me implies some kind of a pretty urgent response, or at least a constant directed response. And so I'm interested in, how do you continue to communicate over time? How do you communicate chronically an emergency? It's almost a,
Well, maybe we can get to, very interested in whatever Chris can provide to us and in terms of what is the risk going there, but what can the town do to mitigate that risk or prepare for the consequences of climate change? So I'm sure a lot of is being done in that area. Different things have different implications, but like to see some more of that. And if there is to be a workshop on green communities, I would like there to be a climate risk part of that.
Well, I think one of the things that could be said, and I forget what the percentage is, I think it's around 35% of our emissions are said to come from the built environment. So the choices you make in how you design or how you refurbish or how you run your built environment, from everything from where you place it, from what materials you choose to use, it all has implications in reducing emissions. And better insulated houses take less energy to air condition or to heat. I mean, on and on and on. So
yeah, and you're making those decisions for 20, 30 plus year period.
Right.
Yeah. So so just maybe more procedural question for you, Kelly. I thought Chris really provided these very interesting charts at our last meeting. And I'm trying to remember, I think I had asked if he could circulate them or he could give them to you and you could circulate to us, but did you get anything?
I don't remember where we left off, but yes, certainly if he can circulate them, he can send them to me and I can send them around to the whole group. I didn't get anything from him after that meeting. But I think if he can provide screenshots, or usually there's like a PDF export.
Right.
Otherwise we would have to just refer. Yeah, because he did share his screen, so I could refer back to the meeting recording and take screenshots, but he'll have better quality if he can.
Yeah, maybe I would suggest and maybe wait a few days till.
Yeah, I'll give him a couple days.
If you could just send him an email and if he could provide the slides in PDF or some other format.
Yep.
That I think the committee would like to see those or have those. So, and I think what I'll put my to-do list, I will also get in touch with Chris and have a discussion with him to see if he could make some other interesting presentation for the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let's see. So that's for climate change and climate science. That's all I have. Anyone else have anything? Rob.
I know that we're sticking with this now at the transfer station, but I don't know what the how does anybody know that I paid? Or
They're
anybody has
scanning
paid.
your license plate.
Well, I know that, but nobody at the guard shack seems to pay attention too much.
Yeah, I didn't see any scanner there or anything.
Yeah, it's installed, so I don't know how visible it is, but it's installed like as you enter it scans
Oh,
your
I've seen
like
the camera. I know the camera's there.
Yeah.
But there's not like green white flashes, or I don't know if does a buzzer go off in the shack when somebody comes up that's not paid their dues?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I can ask Tracy Regazio.
Because
but I know it was
they ignore me because
process,
I go there all the time.
Yeah, I know it was a lengthy installation process and there was a lot of software involved too. So I'm assuming there's some type of alert system or something, but I can ask him for sure.
Okay.
And that sort of reminds me why my wife got a new car, but with the same license plate.
No problem.
Yeah, if it's only if the registration changed that there would be an issue, but I think there might be FAQs up on the website. I can look and see. Because I know that question's been asked. But I think as long as the license plate is the same, it's not an issue, and you're up to
Okay.
date, then it's not an issue.
Okay, yeah, that worked fine. Okay. All right, new business. Well, let me go back over something that's old. At Councilor Turkelson's prompting, I asked people whether they had filled out the forms and taken the class for conflicts of interest training. I believe, John, you replied that you had.
I
I
have.
have.
I had, okay. You have, oh, okay, so all of us have, right? So you have Rob and you have Jane,
Yes.
okay? And
I have
then,
my certificate somewhere. I think I did it within a year, maybe a year and a half. I don't know. Whenever the last time was that Peter asked us, so before you took over.
okay, all right. And so yeah, I'll just maybe make a note for the next meeting to ask Chris whether he had.
Could I just add one other slightly off topic? I know, Rob, you've been following a lot of transportation issues on the Cape, and I just wanted to comment that I'm going to be on the commission's Vision Zero citizen feedback group. We'll meet quarterly starting in August, and I just wondered what other, and Vision Zero is, the goal is zero fatalities for any road user. So drivers, pedestrians, cyclists, that's kind of Vision Zero in a nutshell. Easier said than done, but it's an important goal. And Rob, I know you've been following a bunch of different things on transportation, the bridges, and your interest in bike safety. Do you have any updates on those topics?
No, I got distracted a little bit by watching or trying to follow the Gulf of Mine wind turbine farm sales. So
Oh, okay.
Is that like a live auction?
there's still well, I haven't actually attended the meeting yet.
Okay.
But I guess there's been a study group going on for a while, and there's been attempts I've been attempting to get to some information meetings about it. So, it says it's Gulf of Maine, but it's like pretty much due east of Newburyport. So,
Well, doesn't some of it go due east of Wellfleet? Or is that
yeah, I
a
think some of
different
it,
section?
yeah, some of it actually does go far, but I think the initial ones are going to be a little bit
Further
closer.
north?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's interesting. I didn't know the auctions were ongoing.
Well,
Or is it before the auction day? I haven't
is-
really followed it.
yeah, I think that they're still uh, trying to educate the public before it gets into we're selling
Right.
off,
And
I
and
see.
just
selling off stuff.
knowing something about the way the grid is built out and some of the studies have been done, it would be highly unlikely that anything that's out east of the Atlantic coast of Cape Cod would make landfall on Cape Cod. The grid is very weak out there, and it wouldn't make sense to make landfall from that area.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, it looks like a couple 100 miles of undersea cable. So,
Right, yeah, and
Wow.
so if it's in Massachusetts, it might be Salem or Plymouth or
well, yeah, North Gloucester maybe,
possibly, yeah.
but
So anyway, now that you've reminded me, I guess there is an update for the Park City Wind project. As many of you may know, there was a side agreement that the town entered into with Park City Wind that I guess put the easement or easements that the town had previously agreed to provide to Park City Wind in escrow with their law firm that when the conditions are passed, that the project is more ready to go forward, that they would be provided to Park City Wind. And the town negotiated a better deal in terms of the $15 million payment. It's going to be paid up front rather than once they get to financial closing for their project, as opposed to over like a 20-year period. And there were some other forms of compensation or mitigation as well as part of the agreement. And that was entered into, I don't know, like a week or two ago, something like that.
And so is that for the Craigville Beach landing?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay. That sounds like the terms are better.
Yeah, that basically had negotiated improvement of the terms from the town's perspective.
And didn't Steve got a copy because he's on the Board of Health of the letter that was sent to Mark Ells, that was then sent to all the town councilors and to Tom Keene, that the state replied to the concerns about the dangers of the buried cables, the electromagnetic radiation, and the chemical, whatever the bath is that the wires go through before they go up to the
yeah, it's not what's in the wires, but what's used at the substation.
Right, but it's basically reassuring, the town leadership that this is safe.
Right, and they'll be well managed and doesn't provide a public health problem. So yeah, and that was done separately from the agreement, but that
right. It's a
parallel
update.
How that interacted with that, but
to add, just for everyone's knowledge, since obviously some of the sewering is done in sort of sequence with these wind projects. For those who might not have followed, we have what's called the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion project. I'm sorry. And that originally was intended to follow the Park City Wind route. We did have town council voted back, I want to say it was like January or February of this year, might have been March, to allow us to split that into two projects because of some of these timing issues with kind of knowing where Park City Wind was essentially going to end up with their construction schedule. So we are starting the north phase of the project, which is essentially Old Stage Road all the way up Shoot Flying Hill Road, because that needs to be sewered regardless if Park City Wind moves forward or not, and that is going to start in the fall, that construction. So
Kelly, is that going to include the west end of Long Pond and the Mother's Park revision?
Right now, Mother's Park is in there as a bid alternate, only because it requires the Article 97 legislation, and that has been delayed. It looks like it's actually it's moving forward now, so we're hoping that we'll have some sort of confirmation on that within the next month or so, because we need to award the contract by, I think it's middle of August, the construction contract.
Wow.
But it is intended to include Mother's Park. Yes.
Because that will be not only a win for the sewer but for the traffic issue there. That's actually that's a dangerous corner right now. It's a blind curve.
Yeah.
The sooner that gets blocked off, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
We included that in the construction bid as an alternate, just of, we intend for this to happen, but we're waiting on legislation that unfortunately got delayed. And then I just got an update today, but it looks like the reformed bill was filed. So let me see here. And it has passed in the House. Now it's with the Senate. So
is the delay have something to do with the legislature is trying to get a budget together?
Maybe, but quite honestly, I think that there was some amendment to the original Article 97 legislature to this particular bill that we were trying to get passed to be able to change the purpose of some of Mother's Park. There was some verbiage that was changed by, I don't know if it was a representative or a senator on what side it happened, and it actually wasn't correct in the way that it needed to be worded. It actually impacted the way the project would have moved forward. So we had to get that recorrected and resubmitted. I'm sure there's a much more eloquent way to
Okay, all right,
that, but that's essentially what happened from what I understand. So, but for all intents and purposes, it is meant to be part of this northern phase, is to
Well,
have that.
the northern face is north of Route 28, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's going to actually include a little bit of 28, some of the business district in particular, because we added that extra scope off of a different project to get us up to the maximum dollar amount we really wanted for the state revolving funds. So we took a little bit of the Route 28 West project, added it along with the Mother's Park section, and then all the way up Shoot Flying Hill Road. So that project, we're ready to award the construction contract. It is set to begin this fall. Probably won't be immediately after Labor Day. It'll take some time, but we are going to start. DPW will start outreach. I'm hoping in the next month, so that I can be part of some of that.
So is that part where the transmission cables will also go for Park City Wind?
Yes. So yeah, the reason why we as in DPW went to town council and asked to split this into 2 phases is because that northern section is quite honestly going to be a slog. It's going to be very deep sewer, especially as we're going up Shoot Flying Hill Road. It's going to take a long time. I think the construction contract for just that northern phase is 2 years. For the contractor to complete it. So I know, and I live right off of Shoot Flying Hill Road, so I am literally going to be living this every day.
Oh no.
But it is very deep sewer. It's going to take a long time. And obviously we've got to keep transportation. We've got to be able to keep access available there. So one of the reasons was, regardless if Park City Wind happens or not, we need to sewer, and we need to sewer before the duck bank goes in. So let's get started and stay on our schedule and start with the northern section, which we know is going to be laborious. So that was kind of the thought process behind that. In addition to the fact that if we didn't bid this contract, we'd be essentially leaving a lot of dollars on the table through the state revolving fund. So yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, there's going to be a major repaving of a road.
Yeah.
Right in the back of my house.
Yep. We're all living it to some degree.
Yeah.
So we're gonna dig for the sewers. Are you gonna dig for the power lines too? Or is that gonna be a second dig?
Nope, it's just like the Strawberry Hill Road project was. We construct it in sequence with them because sewer is the deeper utility. It has to be in its own trench. We have to install first. So we'll go through, we'll install the sewer, we'll do any necessary utility relocations required in addition to, to compensate for the sewer. And then Park City Wind will come in. Ideally, like with Strawberry Hill Road, I mean, although anyone who lives there would tell you it was a nightmare because they lived it for 2 years, ideally they come in right after another, so that there isn't this long gap, that all of the trenching is being done within the same sort of time frame. And that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, we don't want to go and pave the roadway, and then a year later, a wind project comes in and digs it all up after we spent millions of dollars repaving and restoring an area. That was another reason why it was really important to us to break out that southern section, because there's going to be significant pedestrian improvements proposed to Centerville Main Street, or Main Street Centerville. And for us to do all of that work, for someone to come and dig it up would be a huge loss, and just a complete disruption to all the people that live there. So we try to sequence very in close combination with other utilities. So I'm certain going to be some water relocation. Typically that happens with sewer. So we'll get all of that done, and then Park City Wind will come in right behind us, and then we'll get a fresh paved roadway.
And Park City Wind is making substantial payments. I forget the amounts.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know them off the top of my head either, but you're correct. And I believe in this new negotiated agreement, they're also taking on the responsibility for the Main Street Centerville restoration.
Right. Top of my head was like $2.5 million, but I may be wrong there. So
I think I have the paperwork somewhere. I'll have to look.
Yeah, but whatever it is, it's a significant amount of money. All right, so the agenda for next meeting, unless anyone has any more updates.
Yes, so our next meeting is Monday, August 12th at 5 p.m. So we've got that once a month meeting schedule, just so everyone's aware. And then we'll be back on the normal schedule for September. My only thing is I am planning to have Michelle join that meeting, so you all can meet her. I was going to have her join this meeting and she's on vacation, but I've trained her up on meeting minutes and agendas, so
Good.
I'll definitely introduce her to everyone on the 12th.
Kelly, if she's half as good as you are, we will be delighted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, yeah, and congratulations on upcoming maternity leave. What an excitement.
Except that construction is going to be happening right in front of my house. Like,
Oh,
well,
no. Oh, no.
I'm not entirely sure. It might not be up there yet, but it will be around me. So,
Oh, dear. Well, hopefully September might be a nicer time to have a newborn than the hot summer. Although,
oh yeah, yeah. I'm not ready. Like, I don't want to, fast forward these next 2 months, but I'm also ready just based on
yes.
heat and humidity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, our first child was an August baby, and it was in the days we didn't have air conditioning, so we would eat dinner in our car because our car was air conditioned.
Yeah. Yeah. There's just a whole host of other challenges that come with being pregnant in the summer that I just didn't know. Like the swelling, and like no one told me about that.
Oh, boy. Well, hopefully it goes well.
Thank you.
It's very exciting.
Thank you.
Well, I think you covered a bunch of things for the next meeting. We'll follow up on whatever research we come up with for the green community, and hopefully we get Chris to give a little chat, and
And then we hear back from Tom Keene and see where that leads us. So.
yeah.
All
Well,
right.
I move we finish, if that's okay. I've been on quite a few meetings today. I'm ready to take a break.
Okay.
But I think this has been a very productive meeting. Thanks
Well,
to
thank you.
everybody.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah.
So I move we adjourn.
Second.
Rob, you second?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. All in favor of adjourning? We're adjourned.
Hooray.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you next month.
All right. Have a good night,
Be well,
everybody. Thanks,
everybody.
Kelly.